The Chicago Bulls reportedly hope to replicate the Indiana Pacers team building strategy and feel they already have their version of Tyrese Haliburton in Josh Giddey. We're going to talk a little bit about that thinking and how the Bulls do want to copycat the Pacers and where they're falling short at if they want to replicate their success. We're also talking about the future of the Chicago Bulls front court and where that front court is falling short at. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of Nikola Vucevic talking that, and the Anthony Davis rumors just refuse to go away. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and we have a voicemail on that as well. We're going to talk about all these things and more on today's Chicago Bulls Central. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about, we got a few things to talk about with Jamal Collier of ESPN in regards to him talking about the Bulls most recently, talking about the team building, talking about the Anthony Davis trade. We're going to start off talking about this, is that the Bulls want to use the copycat formula and try to replicate what the Indiana Pacers did with their roster. Now, we know that this is very much a copycat league, right? And this is that teams do try to copycat a lot of where the other teams kind of went and did their things. And the Indiana Pacers really built their team. Yes, Tyrese Haliburton was the engine of the offense, but they really spread things out a lot on that team, right? And Tyrese Haliburton had some stretches where he would score like 15 points in games, but he was the engine kind of that offense. You know, you built around Tyrese, you have Miles Turner, you had a bunch of role players and shooters and two-way players in that as well. Now, the Pacers have never really been a great defensive team, right? And I think that goes to show you kind of where the Bulls are, maybe how they view defense, because the Pacers, last season in their finals run, I think they got up to about 14th in the league defensively, I believe, last year, but they were never elite defense, right? But their offense and the way they operated as offense, how they spread the ball out, all those things were really what made that Pacers team special, right? Yeah, they had Pascal Siakam averaging 20 points. You had Tyrese Haliburton last season averaging 18 points, 9 assists as well, 3.5 rebounds. Then you had a bunch of players averaging double figures. Benedict Mathurin with 16, Miles Turner with 15, Aaron Nesmith with 12, Obi Toppin with 10, Andrew Nembhard with 10 as well, and TJ McConnell with 9. And you had a team that was just really, it was about the fit of the team more than it was about any individual piece. And some people have now tried to retroactively, say that, well, Tyrese Haliburton is a superstar. Not really. Now, you can make the point that he's a star. He's definitely probably top 10, top 12 at worst at his position. But they built that team based off the team concepts, right? And that's what the Bulls are trying to replicate. I know that a lot of people have heard this, and even in Jamal Collier's, article, he points out that the Bulls feel they have their Tyrese Haliburton in Josh Giddey, and this has led a lot of people to be like, well, Josh Giddey is no Tyrese Haliburton. He's not this, and it's not necessarily comparing the thing. I need us as basketball fans, right, and us as people who have conversations about sports need to understand their intricacies involved, right? When you hear a player being compared to somebody, it's not always saying that, oh, this player is exactly like that player. It's more so saying, hey, we have a player that we feel we can build our offensive skill set around because of the way that Josh Giddey performs. And that's the way that I take this in Jamal Collier's article, is that, the Bulls feel like they have their player that they can build the offensive philosophies around, right? Not necessarily saying that when the Bulls reach their heights that Josh Giddey's necessarily going to be the biggest player or take the most shots, right? But you have a player that's A, unselfish, that B, rebounds the ball. He competes on both sides, right? He's turned into a really good off-ball shooter as well this season, and Josh Giddey continues to improve. I'm not saying that Josh Giddey can't continue to reach those heights. Hell, you look at what Josh Giddey's done this year, he's damn near there. Like, Josh Giddey's played great this season with 20 points, 10 rebounds, 9.9, and 9 assists. He's close to averaging a triple-double. And I think when you have a player that can affect that many areas of the game, naturally, you're going to build somewhat of your offense around that. Right now, people have said and talked about, well, why would you build your offense around a one-way player in Josh Giddey? I need y'all to go and look at Josh Giddey's on-ball defensive stats. Josh Giddey's actually turned into a solid on-ball defender. Is he a shutdown defender? No. Will he ever be a shutdown defender? Probably not. He's actually turned himself into a pretty good on-ball defender. Pick and roll, transition, that's still a little bit of thing left for him, but, that's what it is. But when you look at the type of players that you need around Josh Giddey, I think this is the thing that I think most in this comparison where you need to focus at. The players that you need around Josh Giddey are a lob threat defensive center that can rim protect, which if you look around the NBA, teams love those type of players. That's not to say that that player can't also have an offensive bag, but those are the kind of skill sets you need the most. You need shooters. You need defenders, right? And the thing that I've always said, and going back to this offseason, is that the type of players that you need around Josh Giddey to get the most and probably the best out of him are players that you need and most teams that are competing want anyway. Now, the question about that becomes, how do the Bulls get that? And are the Bulls have been aggressive enough about going out to get that? We'll get to that here in a second, right? So let's say you do, Phil. You have your version of Tyrese Haliburton and Josh Giddey. Cool. All right, cool. What Jamal Collier goes on to say is that they are looking now for their Pascal Siakam. Now, the hope is that hopefully you got that in Modest Buzelis, right? I think if I'm not mistaken, Modest is the only player on this team to play every game so far this season. He's the only player on this team to check in to every game. Not to say that, I think, of course, Javon Carter, he's been healthy every game, but Modest is the only player to check in to every game this season, right? Now, is Modest there yet to where you can say he's your Pascal Siakam? Hell no. He's not consistent enough yet. Great game last night, which was really good. We need more of that from Modest Buzelis consistently. But the hope is hopefully by year 3, year 4, he's there, right? Then you have to look at okay, what else do you need around Josh Giddey that you are lacking? You need on-ball, two-way players, 3-and-D players, those type of players, you need that around. I think Io's done a really good job at turning himself into a 3D player, this season. Looking at what he's averaging is 16 points, shooting the ball almost 50% from 3 as well, 49% from 3. Io DeSumo, a two-way player. I think he's a really good player to have around Josh Giddey, no doubt about that. So you have that, right? Kobe White. Is Kobe White and Josh Giddey fit? Can Kobe White be your Ben Mathurin, right? Can he be that with this team? And can him and Josh Giddey for a full season fit together? We haven't seen that. Kobe White's played 5 games so far this season. The back-to-back restrictions reportedly lifted. He's now dealing with another calf strain on the opposite leg this time. I don't think it's as severe as the last one, so it's just a little bit of tightness in there, and that could just be getting back up to basketball speed. He hasn't been playing NBA basketball, so now that he's been, doing that, playing over 20 minutes, Kobe White's averaging 30 minutes per game. I think that may just be a little wear and tear tightness rather than a huge concern there. But we know that the NBA is not playing with calf injuries, so we may not see Kobe for a little while, right? We'll see what happens there. But now when it comes down to the roster construction, that's what this team has to focus on. The next thing that this team needs is that they need their big. And we'll get into that a little bit more and why that's important for this team. But you need your big. You need the big that actually fits this roster. And you got to continue. If this is your vision, and the thing that the Indiana Pacers did, it's not about replicating the Pacers 1-for-1, right? But the thing that the Pacers did is they went in and found players that fit the pieces of the puzzle that they were missing. And that's what this next stage of this Bulls team has to be. AK has to find the missing pieces to this team. I do think he tried to do that with Isaac Okoro, right? And Okoro's been out for a couple of games now. He's played 15 out of 20 games this season. So there's a lot still, to see what Okoro's going to be, especially with Kobe. We haven't got to see that yet. But I do think that in AK's mind, he probably thought Okoro was going to be that type of player, right? Can Noah Essengate be that one of those type of players as well, right? Those are the type of things that you're looking for. And so here's the thing. I always love when any front office in any sports has a vision of what they want to build. But because then that gives you now, okay, this is the type of roster that we want to build. Now we got to go out and find guys that fit this. The problem therein lies with AK is that can you trust his ability to be aggressive to go out there and get those guys? I think even the most optimistic Bulls fan will tell you, I don't know quite about that one. I'm an optimistic Bulls fan generally, and I don't know if I feel confident about AK going out there and finding specific type of players. Right? I do feel like AK can find some talent. I do feel like, getting, look at what Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and Zach Collins, not this season yet, but has brought to this team. And I do think he found guys that fit the model and type of way that this team wants to play. But for some reason, that big has always eluded AK, right? Now, I know a lot of people say, but he drafted Jokic. He was part of that team that drafted Jokic. Yeah, but they found Jokic in the second round, and that was great. But I think it's different when you are, and I don't think that when they found Jokic, it was like, we're looking for this specific type of player. Jokic is that. I think they saw Jokic was like, hey, this dude has more talent than people are giving him credit for. Let's go out there and see what Jokic can do, right? But the Bulls have to now, in that next phase, you have to start then. If this is what you're saying that you want to build towards, you have to find guys that fit this mold and help cover each other's asses. And that's where this is falling apart for the Bulls for a long time, right? And that's what it comes down to. So yeah, Josh Giddey's a very impressive talent. And what Josh Giddey can do as far as creating offense, what he's done now, stepping up as a scorer as well this season, it's great. That gives you a pivot point. Josh Giddey's probably going to be an all-star this year, if the Bulls don't completely fall off the wagon and keep losing this losing streak. But now the goal has to be about an understanding. How now do you find the pieces to that puzzle that fits? Which brings us to the next one, right? The Bulls drastically have to change their front court. Drastically. It just is what it is, right? Nikola Vucevic, for what it's worth, through the 19 games that he's played so far, averaging 16.5 points, 9.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists. He's shooting the ball 49% from the field, 40% from three, and 81% from free throw range. Those numbers in of themselves are not bad. But then when you watch Nikola Vucevic on this team, you will quickly realize that Vooch is somebody that he doesn't bring anything defensively what we need at the center position. And the reason why that is so important, right, is that with the Bulls liking to play the pace that they are, is that getting stops, getting defensive rebounds, getting block shots, protecting the rim to get you out in transition easier, it makes it easier on your offense, right? Now, yes, Zach Collins coming back could provide a little bit of that. Lachlan Olbrich is showing that maybe he can provide a little bit of that. Long-term, Noah Essengate. In the front court, I don't know if he's going to be center within the first 5 years of his NBA career, but Noah Essengate, another player that could provide a little bit of that, right? But the fact of the matter is that the Bulls have keep trying to apply Band-Aids to the issue that they have with their center play, and that's just not going to cut it, right? Vooch still provides some positives for this team, but the shortcomings that he has get louder and louder every year that goes by, right? Since November 5th, right, following our 6 wins in our first 7 games, the Chicago Bulls have allowed 56.5 points per game in the paint. That is third worst in the NBA. They finished last in points allowed in the paint a season ago last year as well. The Bulls are 25th in defensive rating at 119, 23rd in rebounding percentage at 47.9. We were at the beginning of the season almost 60% rebound percentage. That's how much we've fallen off, right? And at 28th in opponent points per game, allowing 127 points per game. We're also 27th in opponent rebounds per game, offensive rebounds per game at 13.4. That right there is a glaring hole in not only the style that you want to play, but also what holds you back from playing winning basketball. And that's what they have to. Yes, Zach Collins is a Band-Aid that could help that. He doesn't solve it, though. Lachlan Olbrich is a Band-Aid that could help that. He doesn't solve it, though. Jalen Smith can be a Band-Aid at times that can help some of that. He doesn't solve it, though. The Bulls have to find a long-term solution at their big man position. Otherwise, we're going to be in the play-in tournament forever. And this goes back to one of those things we've talked about with AK. Cool. We've all identified the problem. Hell, AK, you said at the end of last season, we needed size, we need rim protection. But yet, we have not achieved that yet. Now, that leads to where a lot of people are talking about the Bulls making a trade, the Bulls going after Anthony Davis, the Bulls going after whatever. At the end of the day, the Bulls need something that they don't have yet on this roster. There's nobody that brings all those things they have at the roster. Zach Collins is a tough rim defender, but he's not a rim protector. He can defend the rim because of his big body, his physicality, but he's not protecting the rim, right? Those are different things. And that is where you're looking at AK has to thread the needle here. And if you are locking yourself into saying, this is the build, this is the type of build that we have, it makes that needle that you have to thread that much smaller, right? So yeah, there are guys in Walker Kessler. There are guys in Jalen Duren that you can put these big offer sheets out for potentially this offseason and try to go out there and get, and that's perfectly fine. Those are guys that could help thread that needle. Absolutely. A Mark Williams, a stopgap. Like I said, with Mark Williams, I would want to see the Bulls go out there. If they go after Mark Williams, you still got to find your center of the future. He's way too injury prone. And so those are the type of things that you have to talk about and that you have to identify if you're saying, hey, this is the build that we want. This is the style that we want to play. This is the way that we want to build this team. Now go out there and find those pieces that get you there. And that's where AK has really dropped the ball at repeatedly over years, is that he hasn't been able to thread a needle. We needed rim protection, right? Or at least a power forward, defensive power forward back in the last build with Zach and DeMar. We never got that. We kept looking at P. Will, hoping he was going to turn into that guy. He never did. And so my question then becomes about, I don't need AK hoping that somebody is going to turn into that guy. I need aggressiveness to go out there and get that guy. That's what needs to happen when you're here right now. And so let's get it done. Let's get it done. Like, if this is what you're saying, if you're saying that, hey, we want to build similar to the Indiana Pacers, where it's like these pieces that just fit together, and it's not necessarily about one superstar to get it all done every single game. Cool, I can accept that. I don't know if every Bulls fan can accept that. I can accept wanting to build like that. The question then becomes this: all right, are you going to be aggressive about then going out there and getting the pieces? Because then you should know what you need. And that's where it falls short for AK and Eversley a lot of times, and that's where it gets pretty frustrating. But then that leads us to our last topic today. Now, I had a breaking news episode on this one on the YouTube channel. I didn't bring it over to the podcast side because it's like a 12-minute episode. I don't know how that is for listeners, right? But that brings us to the next thing Jamal Collier talked about yesterday, right? He revealed that the Bulls did indeed have internal discussions about trading for Anthony Davis, saying this: the Bulls have had internal discussions about how to proceed, including conversations about Dallas Mavericks star Anthony Davis. They believe that they could help this team's porous rim protection and defensive in the interior. But the question for that, or the thing that became about, is that, but the Bulls don't want to give up any of their core to get Anthony Davis in here, which, again, I don't mind. Anthony Davis is so injury prone, and if you can keep Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Miles Buzelis, Noah Essengay, and try to use the expirings of Vooch, Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, combination of those to get and draft picks to get AD in here, okay, you can get me interested in that conversation, right? And that's perfectly fine. But again, I look back on that and I say this: the thing that I think a lot of people aren't talking about this is that they've had internal discussions about how to proceed, including Anthony Davis, which means that the Bulls are also talking about other players as well, which that's the good part, which means that they are looking at everything. And what Jamal Collier and what aggregators, and even I did, unfortunately, with my videos, that they focus just on the Anthony Davis part of it, when I think the thing that makes this special is that the Bulls are having internal conversations about really doing something drastically to fix their big man depth. That is the part that I love to hear, right? Now, Anthony Davis turns 33 in March. He's an often injured player. There's tons of injuries that's going on with that one, right? Like I said, I love hearing that. Collier noting that they will not sacrifice any of their young core in a deal like that until they are actually feel like they're closer to contention. Great. I love that. I love that, absolutely. But then it becomes about, all right, what are the other players that you're identifying? If you're gotten so far in depth to have conversations about Anthony Davis, are you having conversations about Walker Kessler? Are you having conversations about Yves Missi? I'm just throwing that name. I don't think Yves Missi is available, but I'm just throwing that name out there. What are those internal conversations? And then what are you going to do to try to get you those players? That's the question that it all comes down here. Building the right way takes time. Building the right way, though, takes intention. It takes aggressiveness. It doesn't take passiveness. It doesn't take attaching yourself to mediocrity. So let's see what this team is going to go out there and do. Now, with that, we do have a voicemail on this Anthony Davis rumor as well. This one comes from Big O.
What's going on, brother? Haize, your boy Big O, man. Love the show, man, as always. You know, I got to call in and tap in about this Anthony Davis drama. Jumping right into it, though. We all, I think I can speak for most Bulls fans when we all say that we all hate this trade for the same reason. Can we get 60 plus games out of this guy? I mean, at this point, can we get 50 plus games out of this guy? We all hate the trade for just this one reason. Nobody hates Anthony Davis, the talent. I mean, outside of his injury history, I mean, the only other thing people hate about him is that he's a Packers fan. Okay, other than that, AD the talent would be incredible with the Bulls. My whole thing is that when you talk about, okay, what are we giving up? If you're giving up a bunch of expired contracts and maybe or Vooch, I'm with you, Haize. I can get get in line with that. My problem is, I think if you go after Anthony Davis, you might as well go after another young center as well. And that's just to, just to dot your I's and cross your T's, right? Because if you're already going to the expected, you at most you want to get 50 games out of him. That means you need to get a backup center for those games that he's either out or that you sit him to kind of protect him from himself, right? So, and the other part of it too is that we all know that you got to pay Kobe, you got to pay Ayo. So my problem is, and maybe you can help answer this for me. If you bring in AD and you're keeping Ayo and Kobe, how does that work? You know what I mean? Is this team good enough to come out the East if you're saying, okay, we can pay Ayo and Kobe and bring in Ayo and bring in AD, but now we're paying luxury tax, right? And we know what that looks like, what that story is with Jerry Reinsdorf, right? So that's kind of like my dilemma here. Now, me personally, just my personal opinion, I wouldn't have a problem giving up Ayo or Kobe if you're saying that we getting PJ back. If you're adding another piece to it that we bringing in to kind of supplement some of that offense and kind of restructure the form of the team a little bit. In that case, you're still moving Modest to the 3 or PJ to the 3, however it may work. I mean, does it make sense on paper? I don't know for sure. I like PJ the player, but my whole thing is that I think it's going to end up being one of those guys probably having to get moved because of your salary situation and what it looks like going forward when you need to add another.
Listen, I agree with everything that you talked about, right? Anthony Davis and the concerns over his injury history are huge. Now, if you somehow are getting Anthony Davis for scraps and future picks, I'm not as against that, right? But it still does become about the part that you asked. Is that then are you confident that a core of Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Modest Buzelis, Anthony Davis, Noah Essengay, hopefully you're probably keeping Zach Collins and Jalen Smith around if you're doing that because you still need big man depth. Anthony Davis doesn't want to play the 5, right? If you are doing that, how far does that core really get you? And then what's your flexibility? Because you raised a great question. Because one of the things that hurt the Bulls with the DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine build is that they didn't have a lot of flexibility to add other things to the roster because of how much of their money and much of their draft picks they had given up. So it becomes about how much of that flexibility do you maintain, right? And so your question on can you keep Ayo and Kobe and sign Anthony Davis? Yes. But then you basically have to fill out the rest of your roster with either vet minimum players and you have to hope players like Noah Essengay, Julian Phillips are ready to really contribute consistently, right? So let's break this down, right? The Bulls don't want to give up their young core. So let's say you have Josh Giddey, Kobe White. We'll just say Ayo Dosunmu. We'll say Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Modest at the 3, Anthony Davis at the 4, Zach Collins at the 5, right? Which then you have Ayo coming off the bench, right? You still probably have Isaac Okoro coming off your bench. If you've gotten to keep Trey Jones, you still have Trey Jones coming off your bench as well, right? And maybe Jalen Smith as well. So, I mean, that's still a decent 9-man rotation there. I didn't even mention Noah Essengay. Now, I don't think Noah's going to give you much this year, but then you're hoping that Noah Essengay, Julian Phillips, who's still under contract, really give you something at that point in time. And that is where it's like, okay, it is the Eastern Conference, but how far are you really going with that? And that's solid questions to ask. You're asking the right questions. And that's the ones that I don't know. I'd much rather go after a Walker Kessler, who's not going to be as expensive, has some injury history, but it maintains a lot of flexibility in what you do with the rest of your roster, right? Mark Williams the same way. Jalen Duren, if you do, you're probably going to have to give Jalen like $45 million offer sheet to bring him in here. And the Pistons would probably still match that, right? So that's the thing to look at. Now, you can also pivot that and look at bigs later in the draft. You guys know my theory. My theory is typically bigs later in the draft actually end up being, more consistent than bigs early in the draft. So you have that part to look at. I guess we'll see, right? But overall, it's a question that I'm glad the Bulls are trying to find an answer to, but you better damn well be right that you're getting the right answer to that. And we'll see what the Bulls do in that one. Patrick, the center out of Duke, who's slated to go late in the first, I like him. The center from Illinois, I like him a lot as well. So there's centers that you can get later in this draft that can help. I guess we just got to see what's going to happen there. But let me know what you guys think on everything down below. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are absolutely amazing and the best part of Chicago Bulls Central. But the Bulls have reportedly locked into how they want to build their roster. Now, the question goes about it is, how do you get there? How aggressive are you going to be to get that and seal the deal there? Is the Anthony Davis stuff going to work? Do you find a replacement for Nikola Vucevic? And we'll see what this team does. But as always, you guys can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you ready if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.